Woo, let's get this show on the road. Whoa, wait a minute. What do we got here? Quarry of Gore by John Norman. Hold on. You got to be kidding me. Wait, let me look this up. It really is. It's Gore Book 35. Holy shit, by John Norman. All right, let's folks, do you ever hear me talk about the Gore novels by John Norman? Of course you have. Anyway, let me read. This is amazing. This is a book series that's been going on forever. Have I read every one? Yes. But let's read the description for this. This came out June 25th. How did I not know about this? I mean, I know about it because Amazon sent me a notification because John Norman is an author, one of a few that I follow there. But all right, let's read this. So, well, all right, hold on. The Gore novels? No, fuck it. I'm not going to tell you. Just go to Wikipedia and read about it. Here we go. A well-to-do, here's a description of this book, Quarry of Gore. Again, it's the 35th book in the series. Fucking A. A well-to-do, upper-class young woman, intelligent, fashionable, educated, strikingly beautiful, exploitative, selfish, and haughty, a despiser of men as she knows them, taking them all as manipulatable weaklings, meets a mysterious, unsettlingly attractive male at a cocktail party, one who is not only distant and seemingly immune to her brandish charms, but who seems to hold her, to her disgruntlement and indignation, in a subtle contempt. Later, her life undergoes an unexpected, dramatic, and radical change. Seized and shipped with others as cargo, as human cattle, to the beautiful, green, fresh, perilous world of Gore, she finds she is now only an object and beast, a slave. She is collared and branded. Her clothing, if any, and her food, as it might be, are now at the whim of others. She learns to kneel, to address the free as master or mistress, to strive to be pleasing, to obey immediately, beautifully, and without demur, in all things and in any respect, and to kiss a whip and hope that it will not be used on her. Later she meets again on Gore, the mysterious man she met long ago at the cocktail party, only now she is before him, collared and branded, in a rag, on her knees, a lowly slave. Wow. How about that? All right, so Gore is like this counter Earth. It's this alternate Earth. These books have been, like I said, been getting written really since the 70s. That's why there's 35 of them. I mean, I'm amazed, A, that John Norman is alive, B, that he must have written these books like a decade ago, and he just keeps slowly releasing them. The last one, which I read, and if you think I didn't just click order on this one, I did. But the last one, Plunder of Gore, that was book 34. That came out, that was like 3 years ago. That came out in 2016, I think. I mean, I figured it was over. You know, I don't know. He's probably got a million of these written. Who's the other one that does the Frontier Saga? Is that Rick Brown? RYK, Rick Brown, where the guy has like 70 books planned. I mean, look, I'm an author too. Granted, I don't get a whole ton of time to write these days, but goddamn, like, how do you do that? These books are insane. Anyway, you got to have a special appreciation for these. There's people, have you ever heard this? I know I've talked about it before over the years on Sovereign Tech, and I'm sure in Q&As and elsewhere on other podcasts, but there's like the Gorean lifestyle, not Korean, but the Gorean lifestyle. This is a thing where people like live out the life portrayed on the counter Earth of Gore, G-O-R. Anyway, interesting stuff. I can't believe that book came out, but actually, okay, to be fair, right? Like a book series that I recommended recently because of a listener question into your Q&A that was the whole Anita Blake series, right, by Laurel K. Hamilton. I mean, that's 30 books deep, right? Yeah, it's over 30 books deep. So I guess that's not crazy, but these books have been going for a long, long time. And admittedly, most of them, I mean, I'm trying to remember which one this was. It was in the 20s. Vagabonds of Gore, I think that was like the last book that I read where I was like, oh, this is pretty damn good. And I just keep reading them just because I can't help myself, right? Like, it's like, okay, we've gone this far. We've read, 34 books. We got to keep going, right? So So we keep going, even though, again, like I said, I think that was like book 26. Or maybe was it Swordsman? I'm pretty sure it was Vagabonds of Gore, and that was like the last one where I was like, oh, wow, that was awesome. And then they all just seemed to go downhill, even though I'm sure for many people they probably went downhill after, I don't know, the third or fourth. But regardless of that, that's not what we're here to talk about. But we are here to talk about some books, because I did get a question in reference to that. But before anybody asks, as I'm sure you're asking, yeah, schedule's a little off over the past couple weeks. I am literally just coming off of seeing the Little River Band. I'm not kidding. Now, I'm not going to review it here. I'm going to save that review for another episode. But I did just come off seeing the Little River Band, and you get to hear all about that very soon. But I just had a very crazy schedule over the past couple of weeks. But you'll be getting your podcasts and everything that you expect and love from the Golden Stallion here in very short order. So anyway, speaking of books, why don't we go ahead and get into let's get into our questions here. And we got a few good ones here, and then we got an album of the week. There was one album of the week I was going to get into. I'll mention it later on, but we're going to get into a different album of the week, and it's going to be kind of a classic that had a re-release that I thought was interesting that I checked out. But anyway, here we go. Let's see. Hey Stallion, been really inspired lately by, this is a fitness question actually, which is cool. We got a couple of kind of health questions. Actually, they might all end up being health questions, which, whatever. This is the Zomia ONE Underground Q&A, so you can ask, it doesn't have to be a tech question. You can ask about whatever the hell you want to ask about. So here we go. Hey Stallion, been really inspired lately by a lot of your tweets about the gym and just overall your discussions on health. My wife also was really inspired by the question from the lesbian couple that wrote in asking about women's fitness and your suggestions. Was it a lesbian couple? I know it was a woman. You might be right. Now that I think back on it, I think I think she was saying her gal, okay, yeah, it's a lesbian couple, great, dynamite, no problem. I remember it was from a woman, and I remember getting into that, and actually I got a response from that one, but I won't be able to pull that up right now. Anyway, so great. Let's read on. I was wondering if you had any blogs or books that you'd recommend for getting into fitness overall, not necessarily bodybuilding, but I'm sure someone would find value in that too. Keep taking us all to the next stallion, take us to the next stallion. It says keep taking us all to the next level, Stallion. Ooh, all right. Well, thank you. So, yeah, let's talk about this. I've had a few that I've recommended over the years. There is Dareby, which is a website. And that's really there's some where you can choose weighted workouts, but basically it's a website. It's run by a gal named Neela Ray, who I think she's out of Eastern Europe. And this is a great, great website. Especially if you're just getting started off, because there's a lot of great body weight exercises there. They kind of add in a lot of RPG elements, which is very unique. I haven't even found another workout book that even does that remotely. Or where she will base her workouts on a certain sci-fi franchise or something like that. You really have to go check out the site to see what I mean. But it's DAREBEE.com, Dareby.com. And again, great site. They do have some workouts that are designed to be done with dumbbells, or perhaps with kettlebells, or even an exercise ball and things like this. But most of it is body weight exercise, and that's fine, especially if you're really starting out. I've been recommending that site for a very, very long time. In fact, that site was one of the first ones that was taking, one of the first I can remember, and certainly in the fitness realm, that was taking Bitcoin donations. I think they stopped doing that eventually, probably because of all the changes that had happened over donation structures via Bitcoin over the past decade. But they were really ahead of the curve on that, and I got to respect them for it. But regardless, I'll give you some books here to check out. One of them in particular might be of the most interest to you, and we'll break that down. So I'm going to give you more than one. That's the only blog I'd really recommend. I do read bodybuilding.com. Because they get into a lot, and I read Muscle and Fitness. I've talked about this. I think it was actually that listener question that you referenced in your question, where I do still read Muscle and Fitness magazine, and all that, which now Muscle and Fitness and Flex magazine are actually one magazine. Those websites, flex.com, Muscle and Fitness, sometimes I read their articles, but really what gets put on their website largely is just what is in their magazine 2 months previous. Particularly, there was a back workout that was in a recent episode or a recent magazine issue of Muscle and Fitness. Actually, it was in the Flex section of it. And that ended up appearing on flex.com, like, just in the past couple weeks. So, whatever. I mean, I check out those, but other than that, I don't really read a whole lot of online periodicals. I'm a big believer in sticking to a lot of the classic stuff, because something I've said consistently like once a year, I do a fitness special just on what I change and, what I'm recommending at that time. And it's always, we're always learning. I think there's a lot of new things to learn diet-wise. I don't know that there's a whole lot to learn workout-wise. And the reason I say that is because you can look back in time over the decades and look, 40, 50 years ago, guys looked and gals looked phenomenal. I mean, they looked phenomenal. And in fact, I think they looked at really the peak and had very much the peak of human conditioning. What could possibly have fucking changed, over the past 50 years that is in any way going to improve upon the look that a lot of these classic guys, you think your Sergio Olivia's, Serge Nubret even, Reg Park, Steve Reeves, Bill Pearl, who we're going to talk about in a minute. You look at those guys, or even Frank Zane, like, how do you get better than that? You don't, and so to say that somehow there's like these really a lot of new material added in, I mean, there's some things, and there's like new machines that maybe aren't so brutal on your body and, can help with some longevity. Like, for example, you don't have to run anymore. Now you have bike machines. I mean, whatever. It depends upon your goals. Okay. There's a lot. I'm just saying that sticking with the classic works. And in fact, if you talk to a lot of like the models that'll be in like magazines like Muscle and Fitness that will, be the guys that they have showing off the exercises and things like this. A lot of them, if you ask them what their favorite books are or like what their workouts are, you're going to read, oh, I'm just doing what, from this book from 40 years ago. That's literally what they'll say. And a lot of also, I mean, I've listened to, fitness and bodybuilding podcasts a lot especially over the past couple of years. And a lot of those people are going back to the, to the Eugene Sandow days, which Eugene Sandow is the guy from, like 19th century, early 20, I think, right? He was the guy that really he was basically, how to put this? He was the P.T. Barnum of bodybuilding, meaning he's the one that turned it into a show. He's also the one that very much turned it into a science. One could argue about P.T. Barnum, faking the shit out of people, not really a scientist, and I'm not arguing that he is, but basically the guy that brought it into the mainstream, okay, very much was Eugene Sandow. And a lot of people are going back to, okay, well, what did Sandow do? And they're implementing that into their workout routines. Like, for example, there's this, it's not really a workout, it's more a technique. You could call it a workout if you want. It's called vacuuming. Okay, now it's not, vacuuming like your house. The idea is just at varying points. You could be driving somewhere, you could be standing in a subway, on a subway car, whatever. But you just kind of like flex in your stomach for a few seconds. And I mean, look it up to read exactly how to do it. But this is old school shit that like Eugene Sandow figured out that guys were doing all the way up into like the 70s. And then for whatever reason, I don't know, went out of vogue and people stopped doing it. But it's a great ab workout. And actually, it's a great overall body workout for a bunch of different reasons. And now it's getting reintroduced as like, okay, no, you can add in vacuuming again. So, I mean, and a lot of something I noticed even with, reading modern issues of Muscle and Fitness again is that, like, I mean, there's so much recycled stuff. Again, there's not that much that changes. There's things that, like, there's certain things we learn about how the human body works that kind of changes. There's diets that can change. But by and large, like, how you build up big biceps or whatever, that doesn't really change. And I've said that pretty consistently over the years, as far as that goes. So the bulk of the books that I'm going to recommend to you, I say all this in that I'm going to recommend books to you that frankly have been around literally for decades. Most of them. One of them has not. But the rest have been around for a good long while. And I don't see any real need for update on the matter because, I mean, there might be revised editions of what I'm talking about, but I guarantee you those revisions are fairly minimal. Okay. So to the question asker, I'll start off with the one that might be of the most pertinent for you. And that is, and this is a book I have recommended in the past as well. It has a few different names, but it's the same thing. So I'll tell you what to look for when you're trying to find this. So it's the version I have is called the Men's Fitness Exercise Bible, 101 Best Workouts of All Time, and it's by a guy named Sean Hyson. Okay, and I'll make sure this is in the show notes. I don't know if I'm going to link to all these books in the show notes because some of them are kind of hard to find. Some of them are out of print, frankly, even though I've made PDFs of them. So this book, the Men's Fitness Exercise Bible, this is a fantastic. If you are, especially if you're just getting started out, or maybe you're not even just getting started out, maybe you're fairly advanced or you're beyond just doing body weight exercises, okay? This book, frankly, I think you could get away with using this book for the rest of your life and you're going to look incredible. I mean, it's men's fitness, but a lot of it can be used for women as well. Like, I mean, the programs are just as well, applicable to women. And I don't really want to get into like a big conversation around how, well, I'll make a recommendation for a book that's like geared specifically towards women, but well, anyway, we'll talk about that. Bottom line is men or women can use this book, and I've seen women who use this book, and it does very well for them. So this book, it has, the nice thing about it is that it tailors itself to whatever equipment you happen to have. If you only have body weight, meaning that you don't have any weights or you don't want to use weights, it gives you great body weight workouts for each body part. It also offers where you could choose to do like a more like a split training regimen, or where you do like specific body parts, say every day of the week, or like every 5 days or 3 or 4 days out of the week. Like one day you do arms, one day you do legs, one day you do chest, one day you do back. Like it has a different exercise for all those. Or if you want to be hyper targeting, if you really want to target on, no, today is just triceps, or the next day is just biceps, and so on. It breaks down all of the exercises in those ways to where you can choose what you want to work on. But each one of those, or you could do like a larger scale workout where it's all upper body and it's all lower body. One day is upper body, next day is lower body. Some people are big fans of that kind of workout. That's not my thing, but I know some people are fans of it. The nice thing is whatever kind of workout you want to do and whatever body part you want to work out, it gives you the options of, do you want to just do body weight? Do you just have a barbell? Do you just have dumbbells? Or do you have a more advanced gym? And if you have like a bunch of different equipment, it gives you an exercise for that. If you just have dumbbells, it gives you exercises for that. Let me tell you, this book and just a good set of dumbbells, adjustable dumbbells, will take you very, very far, and you will ride with that for years. And the reason I can tell you that is because it's exactly what I did. Okay. There's a lot of different metrics on how you want to measure a person's success as far as fitness and bodybuilding. I have right now my biceps, or my arms, okay, because it's actually measuring bicep and tricep, are at approximately 19 inches, okay? And that being, you take the measuring tape and you wrap it around 19 inches. I got there with this book, and just this book, okay? Well, I got to like 18 and a half with that. Everything else, that's doing other advanced stuff. But to this day, I still use the core of what I learned from this book, the core exercises. It's a tremendous book. It's easily the best book I can recommend to you, especially if you're just starting out. Now, if you're getting more advanced and you want to get into serious bodybuilding and all this, maybe you want to become competitive, or you just want to be a person of size. We have other books to recommend as far as that goes. But I totally recommend this Men's Fitness Exercise Bible. And again, guys and gals really can use it. The other book that I would recommend that's in this vein is actually a book called Sly Moves, and it's by Sylvester Stallone. And that book specifically covers everything. As to where the Men's Fitness Exercise Bible doesn't talk about diet, Sly's book, which is from like 2006, I think, Sylvester Stallone's book actually covers diet, covers all like lifestyle. It covers a very broad range, and it has workouts, but you really kind of have to go to the gym, but it has workouts for men and women in it. Sly Moves is an awesome introductory book. Okay, I mean, it really, really is. And like the first like section of it is kind of his life story, which frankly I think is interesting. But anyway, so I recommend that as well. So you got the Men's Fitness Exercise Bible by Sean Hyson. Another one you might want to check out is Sly Moves by Sylvester Stallone, especially because, again, that's a book that has exercises specifically tailored more for women as well as, ones for men. And that book will also take you very far. I used to use that book a long time ago, and I just thought it was tremendous. And there's some just some great wisdom in there. The other person that you might want to read an opening book for, and I've recommended this book in the past as well, is Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is his autobiography, but the second part of it, his autobiography, is inspirational as well to read, much like Sylvester Stallone's is. But the second half of the book is all workouts as well as diet. Now, you might not want to follow the dietary advice so much. And maybe I'll explain why here in a minute, okay? But the exercise regimen part of it, I think, is really solid, and there's stuff where you can start out, and basically Arnold in that recommends, okay, the first 6 to 9 months that you are getting into fitness, do all this body weight stuff before you even touch a weight, because you want to make sure your body has the foundation before you start touching the weights. And I don't think that that's horrible advice at all. Okay, you want to be at some level of fitness, especially if you're starting from zero. Okay, like you've never gone running, you've never, touched a weight, whatever. If you're really starting from zero, I think the second half of Education of a Bodybuilder is very worthwhile. There's also, I think it's interesting to learn about the history of fitness and bodybuilding overall, which this book does a great job of going into. Education of a Bodybuilder, and it describes like how things were in the 70s and so on. It's really, really solid for that. So that's another book that I'll kind of toss in there. I'm actually giving you more books than I expected, but just pick and choose. Any one of these books that I'm mentioning is going to do very well for you. The next book that I'm going to recommend is a very popular book, probably more popular than the Men's Fitness Exercise Bible, and it gets way more into detail. It is a very large book, and it's by a guy who, let's just put it this way, a certain, shall we say, fitness body, okay, as an organization, labeled him as having literally the body of the 20th century. I mean, this guy is top fucking notch, and that is Bill Pearl, kind of personal hero of mine. I'm just a big fan. Bill Pearl is also probably the most famous vegetarian bodybuilder of all time. He was a 4-time Mr. Universe, and he was Mr. Universe before like that Mr. Olympia was really a thing, because now everybody talks about, you can find out actually when you read Arnold's book, Education of a Bodybuilder, you find out about how the Mr. Olympia became a thing, because Mr. Olympia was basically a competition between the various Mr. Universes back then. Okay. But what was happening is Mr. Universes would get together and they'd all kind of take each other on, and eventually that turned into the Olympia contest. Bottom line being, Bill Pearl is the real deal. In fact, he's really the first bodybuilder that became an author and that like wrote about fitness in general. Getting Stronger is one of the most popular books, fitness books in history. And it has been continuously updated because it does have that reputation. It's been translated into many languages. The thing is that I think the book is a little intimidating, as to where the Men's Fitness Exercise Bible isn't as intimidating as Getting Stronger is, by comparison, I think, to today's crowd. So I have no problem recommending Getting Stronger. It's in whatever version. It's been revised over and over the years. It is a huge book. It is something that also is kind of like Sly Moves, where it's tailored for men and women. So maybe you want to check that out. But yeah, tremendous. Anything you're going to read by Bill Pearl is coming from, frankly, one of the best. Just one of the absolute best in the industry and in the field, and one of the smartest guys, and just one of the best overall guys. Bill Pearl's still alive. And his last competition was like in 71. I think he's just shy of 90 now. So, I would say he did something right. But anyway, so Getting Stronger, I can recommend that. The other Bill Pearl book I'm going to recommend to you, and this is one I've been going through a lot more recently. And I go so far as to say that I think this is one of like the top 5 books just ever written. Ever. Because it's a book that, while there are plenty of books, kind of like Sly Moves, even Education of a Bodybuilder and so on, who get into sort of the more mental game of weight training, okay? And I'm not just talking about bodybuilding and getting into competition. I mean weight training in general, okay, and fitness in general. There are plenty of books that will, or there are a few books that'll go that route, where they'll get philosophical and they'll do these other things, sure. But Bill Pearl, it's almost poetic how he writes about working out. And it really stuns you. And I know that a lot of, bodybuilders basically say this is one of like the key bodybuilding texts out there. It is a huge book. There is a revised edition, I think that's from like 2015. The book originally came out in 78. You can get your hands on it. The book is called Keys to the Inner Universe. I know that doesn't sound like any kind of fitness or bodybuilding guide, but it is. And I think it's probably the best book out there for that. But the thing is that it's definitely geared more towards getting to perhaps a larger size than a lot of people really want to, maybe would want to get to. Here's the thing. There's a lot of people who I think get into fitness, especially a lot of younger people, and I actually get annoyed by it because I see a lot of them at the gym. There are a lot of people who are doing things, and I'm not talking about gals, I'm talking about guys. A lot of guys who very clearly, they are just wanting to look good on Instagram. If that's what you want to do with your life, me, you do whatever. I don't care what people do. They can do it. Okay. I think if you're looking for like great abs and you're looking for that really low, body fat count and all this different stuff, okay, but you can't keep that up. All right. And I think that's, so here's a funny statement. I learned this from Paul Stanley, who learned this from his own trainer, who was actually kind of getting him into bodybuilding and everything. And basically he said, the guy who if you watch a bodybuilding competition, the guy who is, Mr. Olympia and all that, all right, even I think Bill Pearl kind of figured this out, and you kind of get a hint of this statement within Keys to the Inner Universe, even though he became Mr. Universe. But let's be clear here. Like, there's a time frame where suddenly bodybuilding goes from, being healthy, being fit, looking great, having a certain degree of practicality in all of that muscle and strength, to where suddenly it turns into you just become this monster that you have to constantly eat. The body types of like your Dorian Yates, basically any time after Lee Haney, I think things in bodybuilding got crazy, and even Lee Haney would tell you that. And I think a lot of guys, even like Jay Cutler, who was one of those post Lee Haney Mr. Olympias, okay? Like Jay Cutler even says, and I think it was in the Generation Iron documentary, where he makes it very clear, he says, we got unhealthy on stage. And he's talking about all these Olympia guys. It's like nothing symmetrical. He's like, the things you had to do to get to that crazy size. I want to be a monster, but there's being a monster, and then there's like, what the fuck is that on stage? And I don't mean that in a good way, where it just looks crazy, In fact, I was telling you about reading that back workout in Flex magazine. That back workout is how do you get what they call a classic or golden age bodybuilding back. And what they're talking about is the time frame basically pre-1970s. So there's a lot of this push right now where, okay, look, we just can't keep getting into these massive sizes, like let's get back to where, back to the Arnold days or even the pre-Arnold days where, yeah, the bodies looked fantastic, but they weren't these, what some people call grotesque things, getting up there. Anyway, you have people that are going for that really very unhealthy mass. Okay. And you can look at it and it just looks unhealthy. It's not a turn on, right? You can go for that mass, or you can get to the unhealthy part of where you have like these crazy abs Maybe you have, I don't even want to say it's chiseled, but like a lot more of the veins and all this different stuff where it just looks good in a photograph, right? The thing is to maintain either of those extremes, okay? Because you're not, like a lot of these guys clearly aren't eating the diet that could even get them close to mass. So they're not going to be that massive body, but they're like restricting their diet so that you're always seeing the abs, right? You're always seeing that crazy six pack. Either of those extremes are completely unhealthy. I mean, they're very, very unhealthy. And, you know, I'm scared of when I see that, you know, where guys are like, they're just going for the, you know, like cut, veiny look instead of actually going for something that's healthy and that actually has some practical purpose, has some strength to it, you know, where you actually have some power. I mean, you can't judge anybody by what they're lifting. Okay. Like, you know, there's times where I'm doing a very serious workout. Well, let's give an example. Okay. There's times, say I'm working out deltoids, you know, shoulders. I could be doing a shoulder press. Okay. Like a standard, we'll say like a neutral grip shoulder press. It doesn't matter. A military press, you name it. There's times where I'm doing that with 30 pounds. There's times where I'm doing that with 75 pounds dumbbells, okay? One in each arm, lifting them up. 4 sets of 8 to 12, reps, right? Now, there's times where you can see me using the 75-pound dumbbells, and I'm doing them just fine, and lifting them up and okay. But then there's other times, so, I mean, you judge me one way with that, right? But then there's other times where I'm doing it with 30 pounds or 35 pounds. Now, the person who sees me doing it with 35 might think it's like, oh, he's only doing it with 35 pounds. Wow, what's with this guy, right? Like that's a low weight. Well, there's times where I'm like trying to max out, and then there's times where I want really strict control of the exercise that I'm doing, so I'm going with significantly lower weight. Also, I might have already done, a couple of rounds of shoulder presses, so I can't do it with a 75-pound dumbbell anymore. So you can't judge people by the weights that they're lifting, but you can judge certain things by the exercises being done and so on. And it's really sad to see a lot of these guys, who look like they're spending quite a bit of time in the gym, but it's pretty clear they're going for in my opinion, is an unhealthy standard and one that you can't keep up. And it's all about just either, in this case, it's not like Mr. Olympia looking good on stage. It's all about looking good on Instagram. And personally, that's fine. Do what you do. But I think it's sad. Like if you're not doing it for you, fuck it. That's true for anything from fitness to whatever. Ultimately, you've got to be doing it for you and not to please others. You want to please yourself. You got to love what you look like in the mirror. And Instagram is not the mirror. Instagram is not a mirror. You are putting out a fake representation of yourself. Everybody's putting out a fake representation of themselves on Instagram. That's a fact. And even I fell into that trap for a while. I know the score. Okay? So, anyway, all of that said, Keys to the Inner Universe. You want to read this book. It is an old school text, but I think it's and it's going to get you in that mindset. This is one of the books, honestly, that convinced me to be a vegetarian. Okay, but it's going to get you into that mindset of what you're looking for. Why? The thing I bring up all the time when we talk about fitness is you got to ask yourself, what do you want to look like? Why are you doing this? You have to ask those questions before you even get started. Bill Pearl will get you asking those questions, and it does a great breakdown of how muscles work. I mean, it's a great introduction, and it's the book's like 600 to 700 pages. It's amazing. It's like this 5-pound fucking massive tome. It's worth every penny that you pay for it, even though it's out of print. Like, get your hands on this. I think, especially if you want some kind of mass and you're not just going for, fitness or, general fitness. This is the book, in my opinion. And like I said, it's one of the top 5 books I think just straight up ever written. Just straight up, of any field or reason or whatever. It is a beautiful, beautiful tome, a beautiful text. So, Keys to the Inner Universe, check that out. Okay, so let's get into just a couple other books to mention here. There is you've probably seen this. This is another massive book that you basically have to be a bodybuilder to lift. No, I'm kidding, but it is big. That is the New Modern Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding by Arnold Schwarzenegger. This book has not been updated in a very long time. I don't think that that's an important matter, but in fact, this book argues, and I want the new version. There was a previous version. That's why it's called the New Encyclopedia. The new version, I want to say, it's done in like maybe 2000, 2001, something like that. And in that, Arnold himself argues for the fact that we got to get away from like the Ronnie Colemans, the Dorian Yates and all, like these mass monsters. Like we can't keep that up. You're losing something when you go that far. And it's, so, this book kind of backs that up. This is a tremendous book. I think what it's trying to do, a lot of the science that it's trying to lay out, kind of becomes outdated because it gets really, really deep on that. But especially if you're going into bodybuilding, this is a must-have text that's worthwhile reading. But some of the stuff within this, it tries to be so precise that I feel like some of it is very outdated. But it is interesting. So, you might still want to end up picking it up. It's not a cheap book either, though. But you might want to get your hands on that. But I'll mention that. I've read it. I read it years and years ago. Yeah. So let's see. The other one, this is another book by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I told you I mentioned another women's book. This is a classic guide. But I've looked through it. I have a copy of it. I've read through it, and I think it's worthwhile. And it's Arnold's Guide to Body Shaping for Women. Literally, this book is from like 1980, 81, something like that. But I still think it's a very valuable resource to look into. There's more. I have more comments, especially when I've been rereading some of these books that I've mentioned. I kind of have more comments on the original question that got asked like a few weeks back about, women and bodybuilding or body shaping or fitness in general and all that. That has been very interesting to learn about, but I'm not going to get into that because we've already been talking about this question for quite some time. So why don't I go ahead and get into another question here. So this is, this is kind of it's diet, sort of fitness. That's okay if we end up with a whole Q&A about that. So here we go. Man of Tomorrow. I used to call you the man of the Paleolithic because you were such a staunch supporter of the paleo diet, but I recently heard you've become a vegetarian. I'll admit I was shocked by this. Well, real quick. So it's not recent. I've been a vegetarian for a while now, but carry on. Have you totally left the paleo diet behind, or are you just adding in paleo principles to vegetarianism? What's the score, as you say? Your friend from Sweden. All right. I'm not sure who you are, but great. Glad you're listening in Sweden. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, look, life is experimentation, right? I mean, kind of like the last question asker where they put, where they said, thank you for, taking us all to the next level. I mean, I am like personally always trying to get to the next level of whatever humanity can become, right? I mean, that's certainly a little bit of a personal goal, maybe not a little bit, but that's certainly a personal goal in my life. So the paleo diet, I still think that, any diet that just gets away from the standard fucking American diet is wonderful. Okay, even though I just ordered a pizza, woo! But anything that that gets away from that is great. Okay, and I mean that like really. Something, if you read that Keys to the Inner Universe, I mean, he makes a great argument for vegetarianism. It's something that certainly was instrumental more in convincing me as far as being able to get to that body type. Okay, that large body type. Very muscular, all this. I mean, one could argue would be a bodybuilder, but really would have been a bodybuilder, back in the 70s and not like these guys today that are just, what the fuck did they do? But anyway, so yeah, I guess to make a long story short, because I just spent a ton of time on that previous question. Yeah, there's some paleo things that are part of like the paleo lifestyle that I do. Like I recently talked about this because I had someone ask me about it because I posted about it on Twitter, that I am vegetarian. And it was an offhand comment that I made. I wasn't like making some announcement to the world. Okay. But people asked about it and that's fine. with the paleo diet, so like I still recommend it. There's the book by Mark Sisson, who I love Mark Sisson's work. I've been a big fan of it over the years. Very counterculture. I mean, I really dig it. He had a book called The Paleo Connection, which was more about the paleo lifestyle and less about the paleo, or no, not the paleo connection, the primal connection, because he's big on the primal diet. Of course, now he's gone keto and whatever. Okay, I'm not going down that road. But he wrote a book called The Primal Connection, which I still think is a fantastic read, a great, great book. And in that, he's talking more about the lifestyle based upon our evolutionary history, okay, and our ancestral history. And, you know, as Homo sapiens, not as like ancestors, as in, I don't know, pick whatever type you want, Jews, whatever. He's talking about as humans, Homo sapiens in general. There's a lot of things within that, and that I even knew ahead of time of that book ever coming out, because that book is really just a culmination of a lot of stuff, frankly, that at the time Mark Sisson, guys like Rob Wolf and others were putting out anyway. And before anybody goes, you know, look, even years ago, before that book was published, even when like the Primal Blueprint, which was Mark Sisson's big book about the paleo diet and so on, or what he calls the primal diet, you know, there were people back then who were writing about keto. Like that's not anything new. It just took a while for people to get there now, and now it's the, you know, the hot new fad and blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, there are things within that he talks about, you know, like simple things, and not the bullshit Wim Hof method or anything like that. But like where you expose your bare skin more to, you know, maybe more extremes of the elements, where you expose, you know, yourself to, you know, the cold more, or you expose yourself to more extreme heat more, and so on. And you do all of these little things that, you know, our ancestors, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even more than that, years ago would do. And that would be a way of, you know, kind of just reawakening more of your health at a state of nature as a human being. Okay. And that can get into some fuzzy arguments, sure. But bottom line being is that, yeah, there's still a lot of things within paleo that I still apply, or that would be considered part of the paleo diet that I still apply. Like I still wear 5 fingers all the time. I wear 5 fingers to the gym. I have a like Gold's Gym pair of 5 fingers. I mean, I'm all on board with that. As far as exposing myself, you know, to different temperature extremes and things like this, totally on board with that. I try to, well, frankly, I mean, in many ways, I try to wear as little clothing as possible, but that's more in like my personal life. When I go to the gym, I'm not doing that because, boy, that's something that drives me nuts too. You can tell that people are like either dressing to hide perhaps what they think are weak spots on them, which whatever makes you feel good, fine. But some people are there to like dress for show, and it's like, get over it, because, you know, one thing in fitness and like bodybuilding certainly is there's always somebody better, you know, like get over that. That's again why I say you got to be happy with yourself and with your own body and what you want. You got to please yourself first, because there's always going to be somebody who has more fucking Instagram likes. There's always going to be somebody who turns more heads. There's always going to be somebody like that. Just get over it. Get over your fucking, I don't want to say get over yourself, because you're really not living for yourself. You're living for other people, which is really, really sad. Anyway, got off topic. So yeah, there's still elements of the paleo diet that, you know, as far as like getting away from processed foods, which really is a part of any diet, or any of these like actual specific diets, you know, like the Mediterranean diet or whatever that you happen to choose. All of them recommend getting away from processed foods. I mean, and there's other aspects of the paleo diet that I think are great, but yeah, I mean, I'm not like doing low carb and vegetarianism. Like that's not happening. Okay. I'm not doing intermittent fasting. No, I mean, just no. And I've already talked about that, even earlier this year in my fitness special. I talked about how I'm not doing that. I don't think that necessarily works. Or at least, you know, here's the thing, is that there's different things that work for different people, especially when it comes to diet. That is one of the biggest things that I have learned. And even what the paleo diet kind of lays out doesn't work for everybody, and it really doesn't. And we all have like different desires for body types that we want, and you have to eat and live certain ways to allow for those things to be, frankly. You know, if you just want to be fit, you can work out for 20 minutes. If you want to, you know, have a body of some mass and size and everything, then yeah, maybe you got to do an hour or two, you know, like I do at the gym. So it's up to you, you know, how you want to really make that work. Now, beyond that, I think some of the more, again, lifestyle conclusions that like the paleo diet or primal whatever people got into, like the Marxists and so on. I think there's still a lot to that. I mean, I really, really do. I'm not going to get into like a debunking of the paleo diet because I don't think it's something that needs to be debunked. It might be something that works for some people. It doesn't work for others. Okay. But yeah, I mean, there's still elements within that I think are totally valuable, totally valid, even if you are somebody that has become a vegetarian or maybe like pescatarian or something like that. There's still a lot to take away from that. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. But don't be shocked. I mean, I said this when someone asked me about this previously. I've been saying that, the vegetarians have a lot of great arguments on their side. I've been saying that for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And I've never insulted people for that, even when other people have. I have not. Okay, so it shouldn't be too big of a shock. I've even told people, and I know I have listeners who have done it, where I said, it's like, look, if you want to lose weight, become a vegetarian. They did it, and, they did it like, this is a time before I wasn't a vegetarian at the time, but I was putting it out there, and just saying that to people. And I know people that went ahead and did it, and they ended up, losing weight, but that doesn't work for everybody either. Okay, but my bottom line being is I've never, ever, ever, ever ripped on vegetarians. Just never ever done it. So I don't exactly get why everybody's kind of so shocked by this, but there you go. So don't have anything else really to say to that, but just that there's parts of like research done that are considered part of the paleo lifestyle or diet that yes, I still totally apply to what I'm doing as a vegetarian. So there you go. I hope you find that helpful. I mean, 5-finger shoes, I still think that they're fucking great. How about that? All right, so I got a couple other questions here, but I think we've kind of gone on for a while. We're at like the 45-minute mark, and it's all been, health and fitness and stuff. So why don't we go ahead? Let's get into our album of the week. Now, the album of the week, I'm actually going to save it to really talk about this one. I'm going to save it till next week's Q&A. But Joe Satriani came out. It's the weirdest fucking thing. Check it out if you want. I don't think it's technically supposed to come out till the 16th, but I've already listened to it. It's called Squares, and it's like this pop album that he did back in like 1980 or something. And he just released it finally in 2019. He got together with a guy, and they one of the original, he was like this band called The Squares, and they just like finally released this material that they recorded forever ago. I'll talk about it next week, but wow. So just so you know that that's out there. And I know I have some other Satriani fans in the audience, so check it out. Just, don't have anything in the way of expectations. Okay, so anyway, what I actually wanted to get into for Album of the Week is a re-release that totally, I don't know how I totally missed this. But it's by one of my favorite bands of all time, one who also had a album come out this year, and a damn good one, in 2019, but that being Queensryche. Now, this is not the 2019 album that they had come out, which, again, that was it The Verdict? That was a great album. I really enjoyed that. In fact, got to see them live this year. But anyway, there was an expanded edition of an album called Q2K, which originally came out in 1999. The expanded and remastered edition came out in 2006. I don't know how I missed this, because so this was the album where they finally lost Chris DeGarmo, who a lot of people feel that really Queensryche fell off the cliff after Chris DeGarmo, their lead guitarist and really lead songwriter, left the band, and he ended up getting replaced by Kelly Gray in 1999 for the album Q2K. Now, I will agree with you, okay, that I think all of Queensryche's best material and best albums, it's not to say that things that came after weren't great, but all of their best albums were when Chris DeGarmo was on writing duties. Okay, now he would actually come back, I think it was in 2004, for Tribe, the album Tribe. He wouldn't tour with the band or anything. Like, Chris DeGarmo's like a pilot now. He's an airline pilot or something. But anyway, I think that's part of the reason that Tribe was such a strong album. But he left after Here and Now Frontier, which I love that album. I mean, it's very different, and it's not as good as what was the one Promised Land, that IMI was off of. But anyway, so I get it. I really, really agree and understand that the best Queensryche material is all while Chris DeGarmo was in charge. I mean, Really, Jeff Tate's always been in charge, but when Chris DeGarmo was there, how about that? So Q2K was a very different album for a band that really every album is a very different album, but this was a very different album. And Kelly Gray on lead guitar, I thought he did a fantastic job. This definitely sounds like more of your grungy stuff from that era, which is ironic because, grunge arguably came out of the Seattle scene, right? Queensryche was the original Seattle band, well before Nirvana or any of these other asshats. But this has a bit of a grungy sound, but I really like Q2K. I bought it when it came out in 99 because I was a huge Queensryche fan already at the time. And, well, I wasn't a huge fan. I wouldn't become a huge fan until Revolution Calling hit their box set, but that was just a couple of years after that. Anyway, I was already a fan, and I liked what they put down with Q2K overall. I mean, right with the opening song, Falling Down, Sacred Ground is a great song, Liquid Sky, Burning Man. I mean, there's a lot of really cool songs on this. And there's a couple of new songs. I think it was Until There Was You and Howl, which are on the expanded edition, which are actually from this era, from Q2K when it got released in 99 that didn't make the cut. They are two really strong songs. So if you've never listened, here's the thing, is that when a band takes on a new sound, when they first do it, I think a lot of people are turned off to an album. I understand why a lot of Queensryche fans didn't like Q2K. I wasn't super familiar with Queensryche at the time. I mean, I knew I Don't Believe in Love, I knew Empire, I knew Jet City Woman and all that stuff, right? But I wasn't like hyper entrenched yet, even though I was a fan of what they put out there previously. That's why I bought Q2K when it came out in 99. So I could like Q2K when it came out. Now, ironically, this is true also for a couple of other big bands of mine where I was able to do this. Def Leppard. I knew Def Leppard, but I didn't grow up with them necessarily, right? So when they did Slang in 96, okay, this is the sound, this is the album that they're doing, and I didn't really, their songs, their style that people knew pre-Slang for Def Leppard wasn't imprinted on me yet. And so I could just appreciate Slang for what, in my opinion, is the great album that it is, okay? But I understand why a lot of Def Leppard fans, longtime fans, hear Slang and they go, what the fuck is that? And they don't want anything to do with it. Same with when Motley Crue got back together, right? And I can appreciate both Generation Swine when Vince Neil came back, and I can appreciate Motley Crue 94 when they had John Corabi on lead vocals. Two very different Motley Crue albums, very fucking different Motley Crue albums. But I knew Motley Crue, I knew Dr. Feelgood back and forth, but I didn't have this long-standing expectation of what a Motley Crue album was supposed to sound like. So I could still love those albums. But the funny thing that happens there, again, I understand why people who had been listening to that stuff for 20 years or whatever at that point, or however long they've been listening to it, why suddenly there's this really new sound and they go, what the fuck is that? I don't want to listen to this band anymore. Here's the thing. It's been another 20 years. In fact, to the day, almost, since Q2K originally came out, right? It's 2019. It came out in 99. It's been 20 years. Your musical tastes have probably grown and changed. Okay, to some degree. You can go back to Q2K, and I bet you might find out that it's actually, you might really like this album now. So give it a shot. If you skipped over Q2K, if you're a Queensryche fan and you skipped over Q2K because you're like, Chris DeGarmo's gone, who's this Kelly Gray guy, the sound is very different, blah, blah, blah. I think you might be pleasantly surprised at just how great it is. Or just how enjoyable, at the very least, an album it is. The past 3 albums that Queensryche have come out with are still better than Q2K, and they are better than Q2K in my opinion ever since Todd La Torre came on, and they are really appreciating a renaissance of sound and style. So, if you haven't checked those out either, please do. The albums that came out after Q2K besides Tribe are a little on the weird side, so I don't know if I'm going to ever recommend those to go back to, but Q2K, I feel very confident in saying, go back to this album, you're going to get something that you like, and check it out. So anyway, okay, that's it for this week's Q&A. Came out a little bit late, and we've got a bunch of Sovereign Tech episodes, actually, that I'm going to be releasing. It's just been a wild couple of weeks, but you're going to get your hookup. Anyway, we'll end it here. I will see all of you, on the other side and get more questions into me. bbs@sovereigntech.com. Go for it. I'll see you on the other side.